What's up everyone? What's up everyone? Hello everyone. Hey guys, welcome to today's video. I'm Daniel. I'm here in Iowa, Gold Coast Casino. I'm ready to give you guys another vlog. Hello everyone, so it is Daniel, aka Floppy Penguin here today, and I'm bringing you the Purple Hammer shirt for a reason today. So the PBA, Professional Bowlers Association, just announced the new rules on hardness that are going to be taking effect January 6th of 2024. So I really like this report done by Neil Stremmel, who is now the Director of Rules and Equipment for the PBA. And it's really extensive, but also one key factor is that it's really transparent. We see throughout this report, and I'm going to have a link in the description below for you guys to this report, but this report is very specific and very transparent, which is something that people have been screaming for in the bowling community extensively for months and months and months now, because USBC refused for a long time to be very transparent. And even when they released their reports and their research, it was not very clear, and so people weren't happy with it. So now we have a report from the PBA talking about basically, you see it right here. This is their key tag right here. Based on these findings, the PBA has decided to raise the minimum manufacturing hardness of traditional urethane and urethane-like equipment from 73 to 78 for all tour levels. So, the meaning for this comes from the hardness levels of urethane bowling balls not being 73, which is the minimum required hardness currently in place in the world of bowling. In November 2022, the USBC published its third hardness research report, and the PBA wanted to do their own. So basically, I will kind of show you guys throughout these tests and why that it's important that the PBA has chosen to do this. So there's a list of options here. It talks about up here, I recommend that you guys read this on your own about why softness and hardness matters. I definitely recommend you guys check that out. It digs into the history behind this back in like the 70s and stuff. But the list of options is the important part I wanted to highlight. These are a list of 9 possible solutions that they could implement as an organization to get rid of this issue, to solve the issue of hardness with urethane bowling balls. They actually bring up a really good argument saying that some of these balls ultimately will get below the set minimum hardness specification, and that's not the bowler's fault. It's honestly something that's on the manufacturer, something that's on the material, or it's just out of our hands, out of our control as human beings, just because these are chemicals and we're not the ones who, created them. So ultimately, it's a little bit out of our control in that regard. And so the PBA did not want to ban all urethane balls completely, which I think a very good idea or decision on their part. It's also not fair to the manufacturers because they would have to continue to make up for that, and that just seems ridiculous to ask of them. Now they can ban any ball that gets softer with use, as we see here. Any ball that's tested over time is found to get more than 3 hardness softer is not allowed in any competition. Now that requires a lot of continual testing. A lot of bowling balls are released every year, well over 100 by all the manufacturers combined. So that just wouldn't make sense logistically or financially for the PBA. They don't have that kind of money, testing, or personnel to be able to do that continuously. That just seems outrageous. So the third option, they could raise the hardness of traditional urethane to 78. And that's ultimately the one that they've gone with. Now, they have to figure out a deciding line, a factor that decides, is this a urethane ball, or is it a reactive resin ball, or is it something completely different that doesn't matter? I'll tell you right now that the biggest thing that matters in regards to this is figuring out what the distinction is. And so they determined that anything that does not absorb oil at a rate of a certain amount of oil per 45 minutes, then it is considered to be urethane-like. And anything that does absorb oil faster than that is not considered urethane-like. It is considered to be a reactive ball. Therefore, it does not fall into this category of urethane-like. And so that's a really good deciding line to say, these are urethane bowling balls, these are not. So, another option they had is to change the hardness of all balls to 78 hardness. But as you'll see in a minute, whenever I show you guys the data behind this, there was not a single one that I saw in that report that was 78 or harder on average. And so that would be ridiculous and far too drastic to implement all at one time, as it says there to quote this, just simply because the manufacturers couldn't make enough bowling balls to make up for that between now and January 6th of next year. Or they could leave the rule as is and test extensively, which is exactly what they've been doing. So we're going to kind of skip through that one because that's what they've been doing over like the last 7 or 8 months. They could do nothing, leave the rule as is, but that just seems like it would get out of control even beyond what it is right now, and doesn't seem fair, as they've stated there. Number 7 is no balls manufactured under the 73 hardness minimum rule may get softer with use. But once again, that is a lot of testing that would be required and ongoing, and they just don't have the financial or logistic or personnel ability to be able to do that ongoing. So that wouldn't make any sense either. Now, number 8 says all balls must be made since August 1st of 2022. And that ensures that they're above 73 hardness, but it doesn't solve the problem because, as it says above, urethane gets softer with use. And that's the biggest thing that they're trying to combat, is the fact that urethane, the more you use it, the softer it gets. So they're trying to figure out a way to work with this, but just by making the balls after August 1st, 2022 doesn't really solve the problem, because as you'll see in the data in a moment, after 10 shots, some of these balls were losing up to 3 points in hardness, which is a lot, and that's only after 10 shots. And so it can continue to get worse and worse if they were to do number 8. Now, number 9, they're talking about the PBA regional, PBA 50, 50 regionals, and the youth tours, as well as the LBC program. And they want to eventually cover all tours, and they're going to start with that on January 6th of 2024. So, like I was saying earlier, they need to have a line to determine this is urethane and this is not. So, the best way to describe it, according to Mr. Stremel here, is to test the category for very slow or no oil absorption at their rate. So if a ball absorbs oil fairly quickly, it would be considered a reactive ball. If it takes much longer, it is considered a urethane-like ball. And so they provide a list of current traditional urethane balls, which would be the initial balls that are affected by this. And if any are greater of 78, they would be legal for the national touring competition after January 1st, 2024. The reason that this rule goes into effect with 78 hardness on the 6th of January instead of the 1st is because there's going to be a regional player invitational going on, and they also do mention that at the very bottom. Since we've talked about now they have a deciding factor between what is going to be considered a urethane ball or urethane-like and what is a reactive ball. Since we have that determination, they're going to make sure that those traditional urethane balls and urethane-like equipment is 78 hardness and above for all tour levels effective on January 1st, 2024. I'm reading from right here. The data from testing shows that multiple traditional urethane balls from more than one manufacturer were testing in the 68s, which is well below 73. 5 points below 73, and that was obviously making the ball hook more. I have thrown one of the old purple hammers, and I can certainly testify, although I've never had the hardness tested on that ball, I can certainly tell you that it hooks a lot more and in a very different way than any other purple hammer that I've thrown in my life. So, the data indicates that 78 would be the appropriate number if you wanted to reasonably ensure that, even after getting softer due to prolonged use, a ball would not go below 73 hardness minimum. The reason for that is because they determined in their research that the overwhelming majority of urethane balls did get softer with use, but only by 5 points at the maximum. And so if they're allowing for those 5 points of variance for it to get softer over time, if you just started at 78 and it gets 5 points softer, you're going to end at 73 and it'll still be within the previous rule of 73, and you're still going to be above that level to where it's not going to affect it or make it hook more in an unfair way. That's really what they're arguing for here. Additionally, no balls manufactured under the 73 hardness minimum rule, reactive balls, may get significantly softer with use. And this is done through spot checking, and any of them that are found below 71, because they want to have a plus minus with field testing of 2 points just for variance, those balls will be removed and or banned. And then once the ball is removed, the entire ball line will be tested and investigated to determine if they are softening over time and or with use. It could just be the one, or it could be the whole line of balls. And so if after appropriate testing, research and evaluation, they can fall under urethane-like ball category, it may not be removed, it may be removed under that rule. But it just depends, and they have to determine if it absorbs oil at a faster rate than 45 minutes. So now let's take a quick look at the data published and the report here that the PBA Tour has published today. So the biggest key thing to highlight from this is in these charts. We see in these charts some very interesting things going on. So we see a lot of different balls tested, from Zenu, a GB2, a brutal collision, a bonus. So a lot of reactive resin balls as well as urethane balls. But look at this. We already have a purple hammer, the second one on the list, coming out at 69.9. The next one is 70.3, 70.1. And so as we see, a lot of purple hammers, even if they're manufactured after August 1st, are coming out on an average hardness below 73. And these are, some of these are quite low. I mean, 67.8. This one was 68.6 on average. This one was 69.9 with a 68.6 reading in there. So some of these are extremely low compared to the standard that they want to set. But it's not just purple hammers. The pitch black here, for example, 69.8 on average. 2 pitch blacks here that are below 73 as well. Some more purple hammers and pitch blacks in here. One purple hammer, 69.8, is in red. And then we see another purple hammer, 69.4, 70. A lot of purple hammers. Even more in here that they tested. These are just straight out of the box that were on the truck. These are brand new balls without any holes, never been down a lane before. And so that's just very interesting, to see. And they tested the, unoiled portion of the ball because they wanted to put some oil on it to test the absorption rate, I believe. But the crazy thing is, it's still coming out below 70. And that's ridiculous for them to try and set a standard that just simply can't be followed. So even at the 73 hardness. So now if we look at the lab research that the PBA conducted, we see a lot across the board that are pretty close to that 73 mark, especially with the pitch blacks. The Rubicon UC3 is definitely over the 73 on average, but we see some purple hammers here that are dropping well below. And this is after 100 total shots. We see after 10 shots, and then after 40, 70, 100, 130, and you see that it starts to kind of get softer in here. It started at 73.8 right out of the box, and then immediately 10 shots, and it dropped more than 2 points, and then continued to drop and then kind of stabilized, as you see there. But then as they threw it more and more, it just started to get softer and softer. And that's so interesting to see, and I'm glad that they published this report in the way they did. We see it with virtually every single one of these balls except for a few that just are outliers, but with every ball almost that they tested after 40 and 70 and 100 shots, it got softer and softer, because all of these started at 71.7, 71.1, 70.7, 71.4, but none of them ended that high on the hardness. And so we see that the more and more that they threw it, the softer and softer that it got. And this is very continual. We see it with a pitch black here. starting at 71 and then, dropping down to 69.9, 68.9, and then stabilizing at 70.5. We see it here, 71.5, and then ended at 70. Or we see another purple hammer starting at 74.5, so well within the 73 range, and then drops below and ends at 70.4. So how interesting is it to see that this data actually shows us that it certainly is getting a lot softer over time the more that it's thrown. So then the last part that I'll kind of talk through on this chart, as you can kind of see here, and I'm going to have this link below so you can check it all out yourself. The last part that I'll go over is the traditional urethane balls list as of June 1st of this year. So as we see, we have the Brunswick brands here, we have the list there, and then the Storm balls. Of course, you got all your pitches and all like your hot cell and your UC3. And then you see Motive. Now, Motive is the one that I really wanted to highlight because it talks about the tanks in here, but there's a couple of things you might notice. First of all, there is no tank blitz on this list. There's actually several tanks that are missing. They only list the original tank, the combat tank, the tank rampage, the rebel tank, and the purple tank. And remember, any ball on this list does not absorb oil. So what they're saying is that all the other tanks that they've tested so far that are not on this list absorb oil at a faster rate than 45 minutes. And that seems very interesting to me just to kind of see, because Motive has always talked about and even boasted that it's not traditional urethane with these tanks, but that it's a microcell polymer is their term for it. But in the PBA's testing, they determined that these are the specific tanks that are considered urethane balls, which would be the original tank, the combat tank, the tank rampage, the rebel tank, and the purple tank. And because these balls do not absorb oil. And so I find that very interesting just to kind of note that, and I wanted to point that out. So, with all of that said, I want to know what your thoughts are from all of you. So leave me a comment down below what you guys think about this decision. A lot of people, like I said earlier, have been screaming for transparency from the USBC. And finally, the PBA, which is a separate organization, of course, but the PBA has been very transparent with this release. They've released the information, the study, the data, the list of balls that we see here to be considered urethane or urethane-like, traditional urethane balls. So we see all of this data in this report and this very lengthy write-up from PBA. I want to know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I want to see if you agree with this, if you like their decision, and if you like the fact that they're trying to be more transparent. Because in my opinion, this is the most transparent report that I've seen to date that talks about bowling ball hardness and what they're going to do about it and how they're going to approach the situation, and I really appreciate that. So with that said, guys, leave a like and subscribe below. I'll be headed out to the USBC Open Championships in Reno here in about a week, and I'll also be going to the TAT as well, bowling in Vegas. So I'm really excited about that. I think it's going to be a great time. Be sure and subscribe for that because I'll have some vlogs coming from there. So thank you guys again, and I hope you have a great day. And Purple Hammer, not resin for life.